Listen, oh, listen, gather round, come closer. I am sure you know this Mama Ngozi very well, yes so. Rain fell like the sky itself had a grudge to settle, and Mama Ngozi stood under her leaking zinc roof, one wrapper tied round her waist, the other one covering her head, screaming at a fire that refused to catch. Smoke filled the whole compound. Her eyes were red, like a woman who had been crying for 3 days, but nobody had died. It was only firewood, refusing to burn because the rain had soaked everything, including her patience. "God forbid," she shouted, blowing into the wet firewood with her mouth, one cheek puffed out like a trumpet player. "Fire! Catch! Catch now! You know I have depended on you since forever. Why are you disgracing me in front of this compound?" Her daughter-in-law Ada stood by the kitchen door with a wrapper over her head to shield herself from the rain, watching the whole drama with the kind of patience only a woman who had married into that family for 6 years could carry. She held a pot of raw rice in her hand, waiting for a fire that refused to come. "Mama," Ada said gently, "let me just use the small gas cooker that Chidi bought a while back. It's still in the store, packed away, gathering dust." Mama Ngozi turned so fast, her wrapper nearly fell. "Gas cooker? In my house? Never! As long as I, Ngozi, daughter of Mwafo, breathe air in this compound, no gas cooker will enter my kitchen. Food cooked with fire has sweetness. Gas food is for lazy women who have no patience. Do you want my grandchildren to grow up eating food that has no soul?" Ah, my people, this woman and her fire. You would think somebody offered to sell her husband's grave, not a cooking gadget. Ada wanted to laugh, but she held it because this was not the first time and it would not be the last. Even her son, little Emeka, only 7 years old, stood by the window watching her grandmother argue with wet firewood like it was a living enemy. He turned to his mother and whispered, "Mommy, why is grandma fighting the wood?" Ada could only shake her head and pull him back from the window because some questions, my people, don't have easy answers, especially not on a rainy Monday morning when hunger was already knocking at the door. Mama Ngozi grew up in a village called Umuahia Ibeku, where her own mother cooked every single meal with firewood collected from the forest behind their house. To Mama Ngozi, firewood was not just a way of cooking, it was her mother's hands, her mother's voice singing while she stirred soup, her mother's love passed down through smoke and ash. When her mother died, Mama Ngozi held on to that fire like it was the last piece of her mother she could still touch. She truly believed that anything cooked with gas lost something invisible, something you could not see with your eyes but could taste with your heart. She had raised 8 children with that belief, buried a husband with that belief, and she was not about to let rain of all things shake what she had held on to for 53 years. Her next-door neighbor, Mama Blessing, who had bought a gas cooker the very first year gas cooker started entering the village market, never let a week pass without teasing Mama Ngozi about it. Whenever the two women met at the stream or at the village market on Unko Day, Mama Blessing smiled that sweet, sweet smile of a woman who knew she was winning a competition the other person didn't even know she was in. "Ngozi, my sister," she said one morning, adjusting her basket of tomatoes. "How many years now have you been blowing fire with your mouth? Me, I just press one button, the gas light, finished. No smoke, no tears, no trouble." "Blessing," Mama Ngozi replied without even blinking. "Your gas cooker never buried a husband, never trained 8 children, never carried this family through hard times. A small button cannot understand suffering. Only fire that has passed through your hand truly knows you." The two women laughed it off, the way old friends do when their teasing carries no real venom. But underneath the jokes, my people, there was always a quiet competition, a small pride that both women carried about whose kitchen was the better kitchen, whose way of living was the correct way. But this rainy season, This rainy season was different. It was not just one day of rain and finish. It rained on Monday, it rained on Tuesday. By Wednesday, the firewood store, which was just a small shed with a leaking roof, had turned into something like a swimming pool. Every log of wood inside was as wet as if it had just come out of a river. Her first son, Chidi, who worked in the city and had bought that gas cooker 2 Christmases ago as a gift, suffered the most embarrassment. Every time he brought visitors from the city to see his mother's compound, he prayed silently, "God, don't let it rain today." Because once rain touched that firewood, hunger showed up in that house like an uninvited relative who stayed longer than a week. By Tuesday evening, things had gotten so bad that Ada had resorted to feeding the whole household with bread and groundnut, a meal fit for a snack, not for a family of 6 that included 2 growing boys who ate like they were preparing for a wrestling competition. Little Emeka complained so much that his grandmother eventually gave him a stern look that could silence a whole classroom, but even that look could not fill an empty stomach. Mama, Ada tried again on Tuesday night, holding a lantern because even the electricity had joined the rain in disappointing them. "Please, let's just try this gas cooker matter small. Nobody will know. We can even hide it whenever visitors come." Hide correct things and display wrong things? Is that what this generation has turned into? Mama Ngozi shot back, though even she, deep down, was starting to feel the weight of hunger biting at her own resolve. Still, pride, my people, is a stubborn animal, and once it takes over a person's heart, even hunger struggles to chase it out completely. That morning, before the rain trouble started, Chidi's boss at the office, a big man called Engineer Obina, sent a message saying he was running a project in the village and would love to stay with Chidi for a few days while overseeing the work. Chidi nearly fainted with joy. This was the man who held his promotion papers in his hands. If Engineer Obina liked what he saw, Chidi's promotion to senior manager was as good as signed. "Mama," Chidi begged that Wednesday morning, kneeling a little in the parlor, "please, just for today. My boss is coming. Let Ada use the gas cooker to prepare something quick. The firewood is completely soaked. The rain won't stop." Mama Ngozi folded her arms across her chest like a soldier refusing to surrender a fort. "Engineer Obina will eat my firewood soup or he won't eat anything in this house. If your promotion depends on gas cooker food, then maybe it's a gas cooker you should carry to manage your promotion for you." "Mama, please now, we're talking about my whole career." "And I am talking about my whole life. You want me to betray 50 years of cooking because one man who has never even entered this compound before wants to inspect firewood?" Chidi turned to his wife, desperate, his eyes begging for help. "Ada, please talk to her now. You're the only one she sometimes listens to." Ada stepped forward carefully, choosing her words the way one chooses stones to cross a river so as not to slip and fall into a fight she could not win. "Mama, nobody is saying your firewood soup is not sweet. Everybody in this compound knows your cooking is what makes this family strong. But rain does not listen to anybody's cry. If the wood refuses to burn, we need dry wood, not argument." Mama Ngozi looked at her daughter-in-law for a long moment, and for a second something flickered in her eyes, something close to reason, trying to find its way past pride. But then she straightened her back and shook her head. "I have managed worse rain than this before any of you were born. I will find a solution. Just make sure nobody touches that gas cooker in my kitchen today." Chidi threw his hands up in the air and walked out to the veranda, muttering under his breath about how his own mother would be the reason he lost the biggest opportunity of his career, while thunder rumbled outside, as if agreeing with him. My people, that was the kind of woman Mama Ngozi was. Once she planted her feet on the ground, that was how she stood, even if the ground itself was shaking. So the plan changed. If fire refused to catch inside the wet shed, Mama Ngozi decided she would fight the rain herself. She woke up before cockcrow that Thursday, tied 2 wrappers, one on her waist and one on her head like a warrior preparing for battle, and carried her firewood little by little into the parlor, right there in front of the television Chidi bought her, arranging 3 stones in a triangle on the tiled floor, like she was still in her mother's compound in 1974. Ada walked in and nearly dropped the tray she was carrying. "Mama, what are you doing? Do you want to burn down the whole house?" "Better the house burns than shame catches me over firewood," Mama Ngozi replied without even turning her head, blowing gently into small twigs she had somehow kept dry under her mattress, of all places. "Mama, since when do you keep firewood under your bed? Are you sleeping on top of wood like a hen sitting on eggs?" Ada asked, torn between laughing and panicking, still holding the tray of water she didn't know whether to pour on the fire or on her own head. "A woman must always have a backup plan," Mama Ngozi replied proudly, not even looking up. "Your generation saves money in the bank. I save firewood under my bed. Which one is better, eh? At least mine doesn't ask for interest." Chidi ran in from his room, hair uncombed, eyes wide like a man who had just seen a ghost. "Mama, you want to kill all of us with smoke? Engineer Obina will be here in less than 1 hour. Then Engineer Obina will meet proper African hospitality," she said calmly, striking her matchstick with the confidence of a woman who had done this 10,000 times, the kind your father used to enjoy before God called him. Chidi looked at his mother, then at the 3 stones on his tiled floor, then at his mother again, as if hoping that the whole scene would disappear. It did not disappear. If anything, the smoke was already starting to climb the curtains like it was searching for something it lost up there. The smoke started rising almost immediately, filling the small parlor like fog covering a mountaintop. Ada ran to open the windows. The neighbors' children, who had been peeping through the fence as usual because that compound was always the most entertaining one on the street, started shouting, "Fire! There's fire at Mama Ngozi's house!" And before anyone could explain, 3 neighbors had already rushed in with buckets of water ready to save the day. One of them, Papa Kingsley, a big man who took himself very seriously as the compound's unofficial fire marshal, kicked open the gates like an action movie star, bucket raised high, only to slip on the wet ground and land flat on his back, sending water flying everywhere except toward the fire, most of it landing squarely on his own face. "Ah, this one is like a film," Mama Blessing shouted from the doorway, laughing so hard she had to hold the wall for support. "Kingsley, you have soaked yourself completely and the fire never even saw you coming." Papa Kingsley scrambled up, soaked from head to toe, dignity nowhere to be found, muttering something about slippery ground, while the children who had raised the alarm laughed even harder than the adults, pointing and reenacting his fall for anyone who had missed it. "No fire! No fire!" Ada shouted, waving her hands, coughing from the smoke. "Mama is only trying to cook soup in the parlor." Mama Blessing stood at the doorway laughing until tears rolled down her cheeks. Ngozi, Ngozi, you never change. Since when do people cook in the parlor like it's a kitchen? Come, let me take a picture. Let me show it at our women's meeting on Sunday." Blessing, if you dare bring that phone one step closer," Mama Ngozi warned, still blowing at the fire. "I will use this same firewood to chase you out of my compound." Mama Blessing only laughed harder, wiping her eyes with the edge of her wrapper. But she lowered the phone anyway, because even in rivalry, there was still respect between the 2 old friends. "A kitchen is wherever fire is burning well, isn't that so?" she mimicked. And Mama Ngozi, unbothered, fanning the fire with an old newspaper, replied, "A kitchen is wherever fire is burning well. My mother taught me that. You have your gas, that's your own business. My fire and I made an agreement long ago." By the time the smoke had cleared a little and the fire had actually caught properly, the whole parlor smelled like a barbecue stand at a village square. The curtains had absorbed the smoke, the ceiling had a black patch forming above the tripod stand of stones, and Chidi's framed certificate on the wall had a light layer of soot resting on the glass like powder on a bride's face. Chidi took one look at his precious university certificate, the one he had hung up with such pride 5 years ago, now wearing a coat of soot like an old man's grey beard, and let out a groan so deep it sounded like something had died inside him. "My certificate," he whispered, wiping the glass frantically with his bare hand, only smearing the soot even more, turning first-class honors into something that now looked like it belonged to a coal miner. My degree has even turned village style. Better a village degree than no degree at all, Mama Ngozi replied without even glancing at him, still nursing her fire like a mother nursing a newborn. That was the exact moment Engineer Obina's car horn sounded outside the gate. Chidi's whole body froze. Mama, he's here. Mama Ngozi did not even flinch. Good. Tell him to wash his face a little if the smoke bothers his eyes. There was no time to argue. Chidi ran to the gate himself, buttoning his shirt with shaking fingers, trying to compose his face into something respectable, while behind him smoke was still calling out through the parlor window like the house itself was signaling for help. He said a quick prayer under his breath, something between "God help me" and "Mama please don't finish me today," and forced his lips into the widest smile he could manage. Engineer Obina stepped out of his car in a crisp white kaftan, looked at the smoke rising from the house, sniffed the air, and raised an eyebrow. Chidi, is everything all right? It smells like something is burning. Chidi laughed, a laugh with no joy inside it, the kind of laugh a man laughs when his whole future is standing in front of him sniffing smoke. Ah, sir, that's just my mother. She's preparing something special, village style, very authentic. Please, come in. When Engineer Obina walked into the parlor, his eyes met a scene he would probably never forget for the rest of his life. An elderly woman in a wrapper, kneeling beside 3 stones arranged on the tiled floor of a modern parlor, blowing into a fire with a hand fan made from woven raffia, soup bubbling in a black pot, smoke still finding its way out through whatever gap it could find, and a television set covered in a thin film of soot in the background. Somewhere behind him, little Emeka, completely unbothered by the chaos, banged on an empty pot with a spoon like it was a drum, providing what he clearly believed was appropriate background music for the occasion. For a moment, nobody spoke. Ada stood frozen by the doorway holding a tray of water she didn't know what to do with. Chidi wanted the ground to open and swallow him whole, promotion and all. Even Emeka's drumming slowed down to a nervous tap, 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 as if the little child himself could sense that adult matters were happening and his little orchestra needed to quiet down. Then, Mama Ngozi, without even looking up from her pot, said, "Welcome, my son. Sit down, sit and eat something with real taste." Obina blinked. Then, slowly, a smile started forming on his face. Not a mocking smile, but something else, something warmer. He walked further into the room, ignoring the empty sofa Chidi had quickly wiped for him, and instead sat down on a low stool near the fire, right beside Mama Ngozi. "Mama, is this ofe onugbu I'm smelling?" Mama Ngozi finally looked up, surprised that this big man in his fine kaftan even knew the name of the soup. "Yes, it is. You know this soup?" "Know it? My own mother used to cook this exact soup for me when I was small, in Owerri, over an open fire just like this, in the backyard. She died 4 years ago. I haven't smelled this kind of smoke, this kind of soup in a very long time. Everything in the city now comes from gas, from electric cookers, from restaurants. It all tastes correct, but it never tastes like this." Chidi, standing frozen at the doorway, could not believe his ears. His mother's greatest embarrassment was quickly turning into something else entirely, something he did not expect. Mama Ngozi's face softened. She served a plate for Engineer Obina herself, with pounded yams still warm despite everything, and watched him take the first bite like a woman watching a court's final verdict. Engineer Obina closed his eyes as he chewed. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he opened his eyes, looked at Chidi, and said, "Chidi, your mother has just cooked the best meal I have eaten in 4 years. If discipline and respect for tradition run in this family the way this soup runs in your mother's hands, then I have no doubt about giving you that promotion." Chidi's mouth fell open. Ada, from the doorway, nearly dropped the tray for the second time that day, but this time from joy, not fear. The neighbors who had gathered outside, hearing laughter now instead of shouting, peeped through the window to see the big man from the city sitting on a low stool, eating with his hand, suit on the wall behind him, laughing with Mama Ngozi like they had known each other for years. Mama Blessing herself was among those peeping, and when she saw the big man from the city praising firewood soup with his whole chest, she could only shake her head slowly and mutter under her breath, "This Ngozi and her luck, God is really doing something for her," before turning to go back to her own house, defeated for the first time in years, but smiling all the same, because true friends, my people, still celebrate one another even in the middle of friendly rivalry. Engineer Obinna stayed for almost 2 hours, long after the soup finished, telling Mama Ngozi stories about her own mother, about the village she grew up in before the city swallowed him whole, about how he sometimes drove for hours on Sunday afternoons just to find a roadside restaurant that used firewood, chasing a taste that reminded him of home. Mama Ngozi listened, nodding, occasionally patting his hand the way she would pat any of her own children. And by the time he stood up to leave, he held her hand with both of his and said, "Mama, thank you. You don't know what you gave me today. It wasn't just food." When his car finally drove out of the compound, Chidi stood at the gate for a long moment, staring at the dust trail left behind, still shaking his head in disbelief at how the day had turned. Ada came to stand beside him, holding little Emeka's hand, and the three of them watched the car disappear round the bend, laughter still bubbling quietly between them. Later that evening, after Engineer Obinna had left full and satisfied, with promises of Chidi's promotion papers being signed by Monday, Chidi turned to his mother, exhausted but relieved, and said something that surprised even himself. "Mama, God used your stubbornness to bless me today, but please, we cannot continue like this. What if next time the person who comes doesn't have a mother who cooked with firewood? What if next time the smoke actually causes a real fire in this parlor?" Mama Ngozi sat down slowly on her favorite chair, tired from the day's drama, and for the first time in the whole story, her shoulders dropped a little, like a woman finally putting down a heavy load she had carried for too long. "My son," she said quietly, "do you know why I hold so tightly to this firewood?" Chidi shook his head, sitting beside her. "Because when your father died and things were hard, firewood was the only thing that never failed me. I had no money to buy gas, no money to buy a stove, but the bush had plenty of wood, and wood never asked me for money. That fire fed all of you when I had nothing else. So to me, throwing away firewood felt like throwing away the very thing that kept this family alive when everything else failed us." Chidi held his mother's hand, understanding for the first time the real reason behind her stubbornness. It was never really about taste. It was about a memory, about survival, about a woman who built a family out of ash and smoke and refused to let anyone tell her that season of struggle was something to be ashamed of. "Mama," Chidi said softly, "nobody is asking you to forget where we came from, but maybe we can carry both. The old fire for your soul and the gas cooker for the rainy days, so that when the sky refuses to cooperate, we don't have to turn the parlor into a kitchen again." Mama Ngozi laughed, a real laugh this time, the kind that shook her whole body. "So, that gas cooker Chidi bought, the one gathering dust since 2 Christmases ago, should we finally open it?" "Yes, Mama, just for backup. Your firewood soup will always be the main course. The gas will just be there for when rain wants to disgrace us." Mama Ngozi thought about it for a long moment, staring at nothing in particular, the way old people do when memory and present are wrestling quietly inside them. Then she smiled and said, "Fine, but only for rainy days and only for rice and stew. Nothing else. My soup will always meet fire, real fire, till the day God calls me home." And so it happened. From that day, whenever the rain fell without mercy, Ada quietly brought out the gas cooker for quick meals, while Mama Ngozi's real cooking, her soups, her stews with soul, still danced with fire and smoke on dry days, exactly the way her mother taught her. Chidi got his promotion that following Monday, just as Engineer Obina promised. And whenever he told the story at the office of how his mother's firewood soup, cooked right there in the parlor with smoke everywhere, ended up sealing his career, his colleagues laughed and shook their heads, some in disbelief, some already planning to visit Mama Ngozi's compound just to taste what had impressed such a serious man. One of his colleagues, a young man called Tunde, who always wore his shirt too tight for his own good, refused to let it go. Every single day, for almost 2 weeks, Tunde would walk past Chidi's desk and say in the most annoying voice he could manage, "Manager Chidi, Manager Chidi, the man whose promotion came from smoke. Tell us, sir, did the soup speak English or Igbo when it entered your boss's mouth?" And the whole office would burst into laughter, because in an office, once one person finds your weak spot, everybody uses it, free of charge, forever. "Laugh all you want," Chidi would reply, straightening his tie with as much dignity as a man in his position could manage. "But which one of you has a signed promotion letter in his drawer right now?" "Exactly," continue laughing. That usually shut them up for about an hour before somebody started again. Until today, Mama Blessing still swears that gas cooker is faster. But even she has quietly started asking Mama Ngozi for firewood soup on Sundays. Because no matter how fast that gas cooker is, my people, it has never once produced a promotion. Thank you so much for watching till the end. Please like, share, and subscribe. See you in our next episode. Bye!